my name is Beck and welcome to another Are They Worth It video. In this video I'm going to talk about 3 different books and tell you whether I think, based on the synopsis, based on their tropes and their general feel and their writing style and my rating, whether they are worth reading. So the 3 books that I want to talk about in this video are Nevernight by J. Christoph, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I will start out with Nevernight because I have my physical copy here and it is the easiest to talk about. This is a book that is marketed as YA and it's YA in tone, but when it comes to the different elements and themes in here, it is very much put on the adult shelf and it's considered adult in content, and that makes sense given that the main character Mia is on a revenge quest to become an assassin, go to assassin school and train to take revenge and murder the people that murdered her family. So that is essentially the quick summary of this book, and the tone that it's told in is very reflective. So in the first page or the first chapter it is told that Mia, the main character, dies and here is her story, and so because of this reflective manner, some of the tone of the story seems like it's talking down to you, and there are also footnotes in here as well that illustrate extra world building bits and tidbits and pieces that are often quite sarcastic in tone, and they can be quite fun to read, but if you're not a footnotes person and this weirds you out, you can skip them. It is definitely accepted to skip them if they're not your thing. I read some and I didn't read others. Honestly, they are just up to you and your enjoyment, but they do inform a bit about the world building and at times they're quite interesting to read as well. So I would encourage you to read them if you want to. But Nevernight, I gave this a 5 stars when I initially read it. I was obsessed with it and God's Grave as well. I really like the way that Jay managed to explore not only Mia's sexuality but also managed to get the sassy and arrogant tone of a teenager correct in the way he wrote his story, and I really admire him for nailing that voice, and I like the way that he writes as well. It's quite opulent and flowery, and if you like purple prose I think you would like this. And what I mean when I say purple prose is that Jay doesn't just write to inform you what is happening. For example, somebody who doesn't have purple prose would be Brandon Sanderson. He's very succinct and to the point. Not that he isn't descriptive, he just writes in a very different way. Another book that has kind of purple prose is Laini Taylor's Strange the Dreamer, and so when I say purple prose I mean that they are more flourished in the way that they describe things, and sometimes the meaning is not always clear, it's just gleaned by general context. And so when it comes to this story, there may be parts of it that can seem overwritten, but to me I enjoyed that kind of narrative style. So it really depends on what kind of reader you are. Yes, this is also young adult, but at the same time it's got very explicit sexual content as well as murderous and gory content. So if you are picking up fantasy for the first time, this might be a little bit overwhelming for you, but if you like the gritty and sarcastic tone and the fact that Mia just doesn't take no from anybody, she goes out and takes what she wants, I think you would really enjoy this. Personally, if I went back and reread it now, I think I might get a little bit frustrated by the way that Mia is written, just because the angst and the arrogance is just not something that I love as much as when I first read this. I loved this, I gave it 5 stars. Would it be worth it? I would say yes, if you're into fantasy already. Yes, if you're into young adult fantasy, or even if you want to start, but it's quite to the point, and so you're going to know very quickly whether you like this or not based on the opening style of it. And in addition to that, it takes a little bit of time to get to the assassin school. So about 100 or so pages into the book you get to the assassin school. So if you want stuff to happen in a magical school sense immediately, it doesn't happen that way. And this can also be probably classed under dark academia where the assassin school is concerned. Obviously it's not a very safe place to study and it's very dark and undercut with a whole lot of different interesting political maneuvers. So if you're into dark academia as well, and Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo would be another one in that kind of realm, that category, I think you would like this. If you pick it up and you don't like it in the first couple of pages, you probably won't enjoy it, but if you pick it up and you're obsessed, then I think you'll really like it. Obviously I'm saying read at your own discretion because I can't tell you what themes that are going to unnerve you or annoy you and what tone you may like. You have to pick this up based on your previous reads. So if you like angst, then I think you will like this. Personally for me, I gave it a high rating when I first read it, but I think my reading tastes have shifted a little, and so I don't know if I would rate it that high on a reread. but maybe I should reread it and find out. And then next I'm going to talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. This is not her Throne of Glass series. You can start with Throne of Glass, which I've done another video about for Are You Worth It? Or you can start with A Court of Thorns and Roses by her. Both of them are very different in terms of character and tone. And I loved Throne of Glass when I first read it, but I didn't love A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I've seen a lot of disparaging reviews saying that they loved one book by her and they hated the other. So depending on which one you start with, it might tell you which one you're going to like more. But I have seen a lot of reviews as well that say they love both. So if you like Sarah J Maas's writing, naturally you're probably going to like A Court of Thorns and Roses. To me personally, I felt like it didn't have much of a pace, and then the ending was very quick, and I enjoyed it very much at the ending, and I just didn't like anything in the lead up. So in this one we follow Freya, and she is in the forest. She is hunting for her family because they're very poor, and she shoots what she thinks is wild game, and it turns out to be a fey creature, and because she has shot a fey creature, she therefore needs to be punished. So she is taken into the world of fairy, and she is forced to, I guess, serve or be subjugated to Tamlin, who runs this castle. It's kind of like a Persephone or Beauty and the Beast retelling, I suppose, in that element, but when it came to the actual storytelling, it felt very slow with its character building, and you could kind of see the relationship forming naturally based on the Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling nature of it. So because I could see all of that set up already, when it was actually happening in the book, I personally was quite bored, and I ended up giving it a 2 stars. I found that it wasn't executed very well in terms of what I was looking for in the book, which was fae, politics, interactions that were just very stuffy because there weren't many other characters except for Tamlin. There was Lucian as well, on and off a little bit, but mainly it was Freya, and she was just stuck in fae and she couldn't really get back to her family. So it was a decent book if you like fairy and you like retellings. Personally, fae and retellings aren't really my vibe, and I'm very picky with them, so I probably shouldn't have picked up A Court of Thorns and Roses because I don't like those things, and naturally my rating of that book really reflects that, which is a 2 stars. So is A Court of Thorns and Roses worth it? I would have a lot of fans telling me that it is, but to me, I know that I don't like retellings very much. I know that I don't like fae very much, so to me it probably wasn't worth it. I should have just stuck to Throne of Glass when I first read that, but Throne of Glass does go into more fae kind of territory, and that is why I stopped reading that series. So take this with a grain of salt. Will you like Sarah J Maas? Probably, because she's very popular for a reason, but to me, not really my vibe. And it does start more as YA, but like Nevernight, it is very much on that cusp, and it really leans into more sexually explicit scenes in the second book especially, and then later on in the series, both in her ACOTAR series and also her Throne of Glass series. So just be aware of that going in. Technically it should probably be classed as new adult instead of young adult because it deals with characters who are aging out of being teenagers. And then lastly, Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Priory was one of those books that looks very intimidating, but because of Samantha's writing style, it is very driven in terms of world building. So it is split between 4 character perspectives. It is a standalone fantasy book as well. Later on, I believe Samantha Shannon is coming back to the world to write different branching off novellas, but in terms of a story, it all is captured in one book. That's why it looks so long, because it is technically an entire series, but condensed into just one story. And that made me think, will I like this? But when I picked it up, I ended up really adoring it. I gave it a 4 stars, but the reason that I couldn't go above and beyond and give it more than that was because of the pacing. So it felt like it should have been 2 different books to me, because the tension to me, based on just knowing it was a standalone and would wrap up in one book, based on that alone, I thought, I know that all of the conflicts that I'm reading about right now, political, internal, character, all of that is going to be resolved within this book. And I'm a big fantasy reader, so I probably should have seen that coming as well. So if you are a massive fantasy reader and you love long series, I think you would give the same rating to Priory as I did, given that I gave it about a 4. It was enjoyable to me, and I still quite enjoyed all the different character perspectives. It is a difficult one to describe. The character perspectives are across different political factions, and there are fire dragons and water dragons. One of the character perspectives is Iad, and she is linked to what is called the Priory, which is like this secret coven of witches that protect the realm, I suppose, and protect nature. It's very nature driven, and Iad is tasked with protecting the princess. And there is also a dragon rider in here. There are a bunch of other characters in here as well, but those are the two that really stuck with me. So yes, it has dragons. Yes, it's a standalone fantasy. Yes, I think it is worth it, especially if you want to get into the world building, because I know Samantha Shannon did a lot of research into her world building, and that is definitely one of her strengths. But in terms of the pace and the tension, I think while it was there, I just wanted more of it, and I wanted a stretched out, fleshed out world, because like I said, only 2 of the 4 characters in here really stuck with me, and I wanted more of an impact. So is Priory worth it? Yes, because it has brilliant female-female romance. It is very much worth it in terms of the world building and getting to know Samantha Shannon's writing. But at the same time, if you know that you're a massive series reader and series lover, I think you might struggle, like I did a little bit, the fact that it's a standalone. But if you want to start fantasy, I think it's also a brilliant spot to start because it is a standalone. So it has pros and cons. It really depends on what kind of reader you are. So overall, all of these books, I do think they are worth it to very specific kind of readers, as long as you know your reading taste. And I probably shouldn't have tried ACOTAR, and I probably should have just let Priory go by the wayside and waited until there were more content about Priory released before I picked it up, but everyone was hyping it up at the time, so I had to jump on the bandwagon. But that is it for this video. Come and let me know if any of these books are on your TBR. I would be interested to know. But thank you again so much for watching. I'll catch you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.